There comes a moment in life when you realize that all the chasing, all the running after people, opportunities, approval, and validation has done nothing but drain your energy. You've been pouring yourself out, hoping someone will finally see your worth, waiting for the world to hand you something you should have been building within yourself all along. That's the trap so many fall into, believing that the next person, the next opportunity, or the next yes will finally make them whole. But here's the truth. The day you stop chasing is the day you finally create space for the right things to come to you. The day you stop begging for attention is the day you step into your own power. Because when you stop chasing, you start building. And when you start building yourself, your vision, your strength, your discipline, that's when winning begins. Winning doesn't happen when someone else gives you permission. It happens when you claim it by owning who you are and refusing to run after what was never meant for you. When you spend your life chasing people, approval, or recognition, you unknowingly hand over your power. You become addicted to the idea that your worth depends on someone else's response. You wait for their attention, you crave their validation, you put yourself in positions where you're constantly asking, "Am I enough for you?" And the truth is, that cycle never ends. Because once you get that little bit of attention, that small piece of recognition, it feels good for a moment. But then it fades, you're left empty again, waiting for the next dose. That's the trap. It's the cycle of dependency and disappointment that keeps so many people from ever stepping into their full potential. The reality is, chasing others is exhausting. It drains you mentally, physically, and emotionally. Think about it. Every ounce of energy you spend chasing someone else could have been invested in building yourself. But instead, you're caught in this loop of proving yourself to people who may never even care, or who may never truly see your value. And what happens when you're constantly seeking approval? You lower your standards, you compromise on what you deserve. You end up molding yourself into someone else's expectations instead of living as your authentic self. That's why so many people wake up one day and feel completely lost. Because they've spent years trying to be everything for everyone instead of being true to themselves. When you're chasing, you're not leading. You're following. You're waiting for someone to choose you instead of choosing yourself. And the danger in that is that your happiness, your confidence, and your sense of identity all become conditional. Conditional on whether or not they approve. Conditional on whether or not they stay. Conditional on whether or not they see your worth. But what happens when they don't? What happens when they walk away? You crumble. That's why chasing others is so destructive. It keeps you in a position where your stability is built on someone else's actions, not your own foundation. You've got to ask yourself, why am I chasing? Is it fear of being alone? Is it fear of not being accepted? Is it the belief that if they don't see my value, then I must not have any? These are hard questions, but facing them is where the transformation begins. Because when you get honest with yourself, you realize that the real reason you're chasing isn't about them. It's about you. It's about the parts of you that feel incomplete, the parts that don't fully trust your own worth. And until you confront that, you'll keep running after people, thinking that if you can just get them to stay, if you can just get them to love you, if you can just get them to approve, then finally you'll feel whole. But that's an illusion. Wholeness doesn't come from chasing. It comes from claiming. The irony is, the more you chase, the more it slips away. People can feel when you're desperate for their attention. They can sense when your energy is rooted in neediness instead of strength. And the truth is, that energy pushes them further away. But when you stop chasing, when you turn your focus inward and build yourself, something shifts. You start carrying yourself differently, you walk with certainty, you move with confidence, you radiate a presence that doesn't beg for attention but commands it. And suddenly the same people you were once running after start noticing you. Not because you begged for it, but because you became someone impossible to ignore. This is the trap of chasing. It convinces you that if you just run a little faster, try a little harder, give a little more, eventually you'll get what you're after. But the truth is, the very act of chasing keeps it out of reach, because chasing is rooted in lack. It's rooted in the belief that you don't already have what it takes. It's rooted in the fear that you're not enough. And as long as you operate from that space, you'll never feel fulfilled. The moment you stop chasing is the moment you reclaim your energy. That's when you finally have the freedom to invest in yourself, to grow, to build, to create, to align with who you really are instead of who you think they want you to be. The moment you stop chasing people, you create space to chase your vision, your purpose, your future. And that's the shift that changes everything, because when you're running after others, your energy is fragmented, you're scattered, pulled in 1,000 different directions, trying to meet expectations that were never yours to begin with. But when you stop, when you pull that energy back and direct it into building yourself, your life begins to take on a different momentum. You're no longer defined by whether someone chooses you. You're defined by the choices you make for yourself. And that's the power most people never tap into, because they're too distracted by the chase. When you pour that focus into yourself, something remarkable happens. You stop waiting for opportunities, and you start creating them. You stop being reactive, and you start becoming proactive. You begin to realize that every ounce of energy you once wasted on people who didn't see your worth could actually be fuel to develop skills, to sharpen your mindset, to build resilience. Instead of thinking, how can I make them notice me? The question becomes, how can I make myself so undeniable that no one can ignore me? That's where real power lies, not in the hands of others, but in the discipline, consistency, and drive you build for yourself. Think about it. Every single person who has achieved greatness wasn't chasing people, they were chasing their own vision. They weren't consumed with convincing others to believe in them, they were consumed with becoming the kind of person who couldn't be overlooked. They understood that attention is fleeting, but growth is permanent. When you build yourself, you're creating a foundation that nobody can take away from you. When you chase others, you're building your life on sand, constantly shifting depending on their approval. Directing energy inward doesn't mean you isolate yourself or ignore relationships. It means you stop making them your source of validation. It means you no longer tie yourself, worth to whether or not someone sees you. Instead, you build habits, disciplines, and standards that raise the way you see yourself. And when you respect yourself, when you honor your own growth, that radiates outwards in everything you do. You attract better people, better opportunities, and better results. Not because you begged for them, but because your energy is aligned with strength instead of need. When you commit to building yourself, you also stop fearing rejection. Why? Because rejection doesn't define you anymore. You're not crushed by someone walking away, because your foundation isn't built on them. It's built on you. And here's the truth. Rejection becomes redirection. Every no you hear, every closed door, every person who overlooks you, it all becomes fuel for growth. You learn to channel it into building your character, your skills, your vision. Instead of being broken by rejection, you rise because of it. That's the difference between chasing others and building yourself. One keeps you weak, the other makes you unstoppable. This is about shifting your identity. When you chase, you're saying, I'm not enough as I am, so I need you to complete me. But when you build yourself, you're declaring, I'm already enough, and I'm only getting stronger. That shift in mindset is magnetic. People gravitate toward those who move with certainty, those who know who they are, those who don't need external approval to validate their existence. You don't get there by begging for someone's attention. You get there by showing up for yourself every single day. The energy you invest in yourself is never wasted. Every book you read, every workout you push through, every late night you spend building your craft, every discipline you develop, it compounds, it stacks, it creates momentum, and while others are still busy running in circles, trying to get noticed, you're quietly becoming unstoppable. That's what happens when you stop chasing and start building. You create a life that speaks for itself, a presence that doesn't need to be explained, a confidence that doesn't need to be justified. When you stop chasing, you stop negotiating your value. Every time you run after someone, you're unconsciously saying, I need you to make me whole. I need you to confirm I matter. And when you live like that, you give away the most valuable thing you have, your power. You let others hold the pen to write your story, instead of writing it yourself. The moment you recognize that your value isn't something people give to you, but something you decide for yourself, everything changes. You stop begging for validation and you start demanding respect, not through words, not through arguments, but through the way you carry yourself, the way you move, the way you live. True confidence isn't built by chasing. It's built in the trenches of self-discipline, in the moments nobody's watching, in the late nights and early mornings when you're investing in yourself. That's where confidence comes from, proving to yourself that you can rely on you. Not from likes, not from applause, not from someone finally saying, I see your worth. If you need someone else to tell you who you are, then you'll always be vulnerable to their silence. But if you define your worth from within, you're untouchable. Their opinion no longer has the power to build you or break you. Think about the energy shift that happens when you stop chasing and start building. People feel it. When you're desperate, when you're needy, when you're running after approval, your energy communicates it before you even open your mouth. People sense it and they pull away. But when you're grounded, when you're certain, when you move with conviction, the same people who ignored you suddenly notice. Why? Because confidence is magnetic. Certainty is attractive. And the irony is, when you stop chasing, you often end up attracting more than you ever did while running after others. This is the law of life. People are drawn to strength, not weakness. When you chase, you're operating from weakness, from lack, from the belief that you need someone else to complete you. But when you stop chasing and stand in your own power, you flip that script. You start radiating strength, self-respect, and clarity. And that draws the right people into your orbit. The ones who see your value without you having to prove it. The ones who match your energy instead of draining it. You don't get there by trying to convince anyone. You get there by embodying it. And here's the truth most people miss. Your energy sets the standard for how others treat you. If you keep showing people that you're willing to run after them, to settle for breadcrumbs, to beg for attention, they'll keep giving you less. But when you hold yourself to a higher standard, when you stop chasing and start building, you shift the dynamic. You no longer tolerate being overlooked because you know your value doesn't come from their recognition. It comes from your own growth, your own commitment, your own identity. The moment you realize you don't need to chase is the moment you step into freedom, because then rejection doesn't sting the same way. Silence doesn't shake you. Someone walking away doesn't break you. Why? Because you're rooted in yourself. You're anchored in who you are and who you're becoming. And when you live from that place, people can't help but feel it. They can't help but notice. You don't have to shout it. You don't have to prove it. You just are it. Building that kind of confidence takes work, but it's the kind of work that pays you back for a lifetime. Every small win you create for yourself, every time you honor your own standards, every time you choose to rise instead of chase, you're depositing into that bank of self-respect. And that account grows, it compounds, it builds interest, until one day you look back and realize you don't just feel confident. You've become unshakable. When you stop chasing and start building, you unlock the power of alignment. Chasing always puts you out of alignment because you're reaching outside of yourself for something you think will complete you. You're trying to grab onto people, opportunities, or recognition, hoping they'll fill the gaps in your identity. But every time you do that, you step out of your own lane. You start running someone else's race, playing by someone else's rules, measuring your life against their scoreboard. That's why it always feels exhausting. It's not your race. The more you chase, the further you drift away from who you really are and what you're meant to do. Alignment, on the other hand, feels completely different. It's when your thoughts, actions, and values are moving in the same direction. It's when you stop forcing outcomes and start creating them. It's when you build habits, disciplines, and standards that reflect your highest self instead of your need for approval. And the moment you align with your own vision instead of chasing someone else's, life starts moving differently. Doors open, energy flows, people notice, not because you begged for it, but because you're finally walking in authenticity. Chasing will always drain you, but alignment energizes you. Think about it. How many times have you burned yourself out trying to keep someone else happy, trying to impress someone, or trying to hold on to something that wasn't meant for you? You probably walked away feeling empty, tired, frustrated. But when you're aligned with your purpose, even hard work feels different. You may be tired physically, but your soul feels alive. You're not drained, you're fueled, you're not chasing, you're attracting. And that's the difference alignment makes. The reason alignment is so powerful is because it's honest. When you stop running after people, you stop pretending to be someone you're not. Chasing always forces you into performance mode. You start bending, twisting, and reshaping yourself to fit into someone else's idea of who you should be. That's why it never feels sustainable. You're living a version of yourself that isn't real. But when you stand in your truth, when you stop needing to impress and simply commit to becoming the best version of you, you step into a power that can't be faked. People might resist it. They might not understand it, but they can't deny it. Alignment is also about integrity with yourself. It's about keeping the promises you make to you. Chasing is external. You're constantly trying to prove yourself to the world, but alignment is internal. You're proving to yourself that you can be trusted. You say you'll wake up early, and you do it. You say you'll stick to a goal, and you honor it. You say you won't settle for less than you deserve, and you back that up with action. That's alignment, and it's the foundation of real confidence. When you live in alignment, people feel it. They may not know what it is, but they sense it. It's the way you carry yourself, the way you speak, the way you walk into a room without needing attention, but commanding it anyway. That's the power of alignment. You don't have to chase attention, respect, or opportunities because you've built yourself into the kind of person who naturally attracts them. You're not trying to convince anyone anymore. You're simply showing up as yourself consistently, unapologetically, and here's the thing about alignment, it always leads to freedom. Chasing traps you. It ties your value to someone else's recognition, someone else's approval, someone else's choices. But alignment frees you because it roots your identity in something no one can take away. Your own growth, your own commitment, your own vision. You can lose people, jobs, opportunities, and still not lose yourself. Because you weren't chasing them to begin with, you were building from within. The shift from chasing to alignment is subtle but life-changing. It requires courage because it means you're no longer living for applause. It means you might lose people who only valued you when you were running after them. It means you'll have to let go of old versions of yourself that played small just to be accepted. But what you gain is immeasurable. You gain strength, clarity, and a level of peace that no amount of chasing could ever give you. The moment you stop chasing is the moment you reclaim your energy, and that energy is the currency of your future. Think about how much of your life force gets wasted on running after people, situations, or outcomes that were never in your control to begin with. You spend your mental energy crafting texts, replaying conversations, analyzing body language, wondering if you're enough in someone else's eyes. That energy could have been invested into building your body stronger, sharpening your mind, creating something new, or stepping into opportunities that would actually move you forward. But chasing blinds you because your focus is directed outward instead of inward. And whatever you focus on grows. If you keep focusing on who isn't choosing you, you magnify your emptiness. But when you redirect that focus back into yourself, you magnify your strength. Energy is influence, and when you give it away recklessly by chasing, you lose power. But when you conserve it, when you pour it into yourself with intention, you become magnetic. People start feeling something different about you. They may not know why, but they sense a shift. They feel your presence before you even speak. Because you're no longer desperate for validation. You're rooted in your own growth. You're not chasing attention anymore. You're creating gravity, and gravity pulls. That's why the day you stop chasing is the day you start winning. You shift from begging to attracting, from hoping to creating, from waiting to moving. The truth is, the world rewards energy. People are drawn to those who have clarity, vitality, and direction. But you can't cultivate those qualities when you're exhausted from chasing. You need energy to think bigger, to take action, to stay disciplined when it's hard, to execute when most people give up. And the only way to generate that kind of energy is to stop leaking it into places that don't return it. Every time you chase someone, every time you obsess over being chosen, you're making an unconscious trade. You're handing over your energy in exchange for the hope of approval. But when you stop making that trade, you start compounding your energy into something unstoppable. Reclaiming your energy also gives you emotional freedom. Chasing keeps you chained to the highs and lows of other people's choices. If they give you attention, you feel good. If they pull away, you crash. You're on a roller coaster that never ends, and it's exhausting. But when you stop chasing, you break that cycle. You start creating stability from within. Your mood is no longer controlled by who texts you back or who notices you. Instead, it's fueled by your own progress, your own discipline, your own sense of purpose. That kind of emotional independence is rare, and it's powerful. It makes you untouchable in a world where most people are still running after approval. This shift doesn't just change how you feel, it changes how you perform. When your energy is no longer scattered on distractions, it becomes laser-focused. You start moving with clarity. You start making decisions faster with conviction. You start building momentum because now your energy is fully invested in you. That's when you begin to separate yourself from the crowd. Most people never win because they're too tired from chasing the wrong things. But the ones who stop, who redirect all that energy into building themselves, are the ones who rise. There's also a deeper truth here. When you stop chasing, you actually give people space to come toward you. Chasing pushes them away because it carries the energy of neediness and desperation. But when you stand still, strong, focused on your growth, you flip the dynamic. You stop needing them, and ironically, that's when they start noticing you. It's not about playing games, it's about shifting your energy. People are drawn to sufficient energy, to confidence, to independence. When you stop leaking your power by chasing, you naturally become someone who attracts instead of someone who pursues. And let's be clear, this isn't about arrogance, it's about stewardship. It's about managing your energy like it's the most valuable resource you have, because it is. Every time you choose not to chase, you're making a declaration. My energy is too valuable to waste on things outside my control. I will invest it into myself, my vision, my growth. And that decision compounds. Days of energy invested into yourself turn into weeks. Weeks turn into months. And before you know it, you've built momentum so strong it can't be ignored. That's when winning stops being an event and starts being a lifestyle.